Hello and welcome to another episode of Can You Talk Real Quick? Today I'll be talking with veteran political reporter and now professor at a very prestigious university in Southern California. The great Sam Youngman joins me to talk about, well, the news, because he is the co-author of my very favorite daily newsletter that you can get in your email delivered each and every day called Today's Big Stuff, now doing a weekly podcast along with it. Sam and I had a great conversation. I really like this guy, and so I invited him to join me real quick. You know, a short, efficiently produced conversation with someone who knows stuff about things that are happening and who will let me call them and tape a quick chat to help us better understand an issue. And today, that's, well, the news and political news and how it works. Sam certainly is an expert in journalism where he's got 2 degrees, a bachelor's and a master's, and turns out he's an expert in cocaine too, so that came in handy. I love the newsletter that he puts out. I've mentioned it and referred to it many times here on the podcast. And let me just read a little sample of the opening of yesterday's. It's Wednesday. There are 482 days until the presidential election. Joe Manchin has not begun to screw us. Iowa Republicans ban abortion in the middle of the night. And Dark Brandon says, F inflation. Be advised, this newsletter uses cuss words to talk about politics. And really, how the hell else could you trust a political newsletter that doesn't? And then it opens like this. Howdy, sexy patriots. How the heck are you? Sexy and patriotic? Yep, we knew it. Today we thought we'd do something a little different and talk about music. We listened to that song Trump made with the January 6th scumbags, and we can't believe we're saying this, but it's not half bad. Just kidding. Can you fucking imagine? Sorry to scare you like that. We'd rather poop out of our ears. No, this is actually a Jack White appreciation post. If you're not familiar with White, he's a badass musician from the White Stripes and a rock star who took to Instagram to call out Guy Fieri, Mark Wahlberg, Joe Rogan, and anyone else who hangs out with orange ass breath. Guys, that's just how the newsletter starts. And then it goes from there, linking to all kinds of great news stories. I love it. It makes me laugh. It makes me think. It gives me a great perspective. And I think that you should subscribe. So that's about all I need to say before I get to my conversation with Sam Youngman right now. Other than the fact that, like I said, veteran political campaign reporter, former White House correspondent, covered presidential campaigns in 2004, 2008, 2012, countless U.S. House and Senate races, covered the George Bush administration, Barack Obama, while working for The Hill, Reuters, and plenty of other news organizations. A native of Kentucky. We talked a little bit about that because of that old Kentucky accent you hear. I love Sam Youngman. I think you will too. So let's do it. Sam Youngman, can you talk real quick? Daily newsletter, which has just upgraded itself to now a weekly podcast. It's great to see you, Uncle Sam.
It's great to be with you, Pete. Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, we're getting fancy.
Getting fancy, and yeah, I told you I love, you know, I love the newsletter. You've joined me before. I love talking to you, but I love hearing you have this whatever drawl your voice is. You have a great voice and an accent. And as I told you when I heard the first version, I was like, I don't like how good you are at this. It's very good. I'm giving you the big praise.
Man, you've been so supportive. We really appreciate it. And yeah, this accent's from Kentucky. It's the only charming thing about me, so I really try to play it up.
Well, that's good to know.
I really appreciate you saying that. We've been doing this newsletter for about 5 years now, and gosh, for the last couple of years, our readers have been asking, when are you launching a podcast? When are you launching a podcast? And we wanted to wait until we were the last 2 middle-aged dudes in America who didn't have a podcast.
Yes.
And so yeah, we timed it just right.
Well, I mean, you could say that, why enter a crowded space, but you could certainly say that about a daily newsletter as well, or news rundown. But what you guys are doing is like so much different than what anybody else is doing. The language is very, very bad. You use very bad language.
Yeah, we have potty mouths. But, we live in an age where Elon Musk is promoting Tucker Carlson's interview with an alleged human trafficker. If that's not the time to cuss, I don't know when is. I remember I was a kid, they told me it's okay to cuss when you hit your thumb with a hammer. And I feel like, America keeps getting its thumb hit with a hammer every day. So,
all day.
We're a lot.
Every day, all day. I just got done watching Republicans and I don't know, which maybe oversight with the head of the FBI, Chris Wray, today. And I was cursing at it, and I think that's what makes a newsletter. You're channeling people's I don't know, how do you describe it? What do your readers say about kind of how you're speaking for them, how you're saying what's in our heads?
Well, I think it's comfort, right? I mean, I think so much of the early Trump years, we were being gaslit so much, we felt like we were losing our minds. And there was real power in knowing that other people were feeling the same things you were, feeling the same outrage. It's sort of like you see something crazy and you turn to your buddy and you say, you're seeing that too, right? You want to make sure you're not hallucinating. And a lot of the Trump years felt like a horrifying bad trip. And so I think there was, a lot of comfort in knowing that other people were saying the same crazy stuff.
I think that's so well put. That's what I say is the truth about this podcast, because I think, I do it daily. And I think that I phrase it a little differently, but it's the same exact thing. There's Earth 1 and there's Earth 2. And you want to know that the Earth that you're living on is the real one where, climate is changing rapidly and the president is lying about the outcome of the election and vaccines are effective. And you could go on and on about the kind of critical mass of people that almost make you question your own reality. I think I'm saying pretty much what you said a little differently.
No, I think that's absolutely right. I mean, we started the newsletter for a handful of friends, but if we're honest about it, we started it for ourselves. We were going through the same emotional roller coaster everybody else was. And we needed an outlet. We needed some place to cuss and laugh and mock these people. And so we started this thing. And for a long time, it was kind of self-serving. And then in 2019, we got an email from a woman in Louisiana who'd been reading the newsletter. And she said, "This is keeping me going." And it was like, oh no, now we've got purpose. But it became sort of a rallying cry. And this, it made us very aware that we weren't alone in what we were feeling. And we wanted to make sure nobody else felt that alone either.
Yeah. And I think that there's another, I don't know. I almost don't want to characterize us as liberals or progressives anymore. It's just when you see a certain type of behavior, you reject that. Cruelty, hypocrisy, just dishonesty, greed. Those can all be things that anybody of any political ilk can feel and play out and behave in those ways. But when we see it coming from one side all day, every single day, again, going back to this Chris Wray, and you guys, you actually covered this in anticipation on today's newsletter. You wrote, "Today, Jim Jordan, with a G, well done, is going to beat up on Chris Wray. Frankly, we don't give a shit. Wray is a disaster as FBI director, and he probably deserves whatever those creeps do to him. But we should keep in mind," and by the way, we mean the gullible rubes at CNN, "the people grilling him helped launch and then cover up an attack on the Capitol." That's what I love about this newsletter. It's like saying, yeah, listen, two things can be true. Chris Wray has done a lot of terrible things, but that doesn't mean the guy questioning him should even be in that chair. Let's be clear. On Earth 2, that guy should be at least not a congressman. I love it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, it's a silly newsletter, but it does sort of fill a void. I mean, CNN is never going to say, "Hey, Jim Jordan, remember when you covered up for all those molestations? Well, maybe you shouldn't be the guy in charge of the weaponization committee. Maybe you don't actually give a damn about, keeping kids safe." It's just, I think we saw this so much during the Trump years, was just sort of this failing of the press to say things like they are.
Well, you're really good at that. And so I want to ask you about Tommy Tuberville, who you say is a racist dumb shit. Now, in the newsletter, you write that. Now,
I say it in my personal life a lot, too.
But let's be clear, Sam. Let's be honest. The elephant in the room. You look and sound super racist. But still, I want to hear your thoughts on Tommy Tuberville's tough question that he had to. What are your thoughts on that? Even though you're harnessed with that look and accent, you must not actually be as racist as Tommy Tuberville.
Well, I don't know that anybody's as racist as Tommy Tuberville. No, you raise an interesting point. I am very cognizant of what I sound like and what I look like. And I think there's almost an obligation for people like me to speak out these days.
Yeah, I think white men especially, white women too, but sure, yeah. But certainly,
you should hear this accent speaking out against racism.
Yes.
If for no other reason than to counter this accent, and people like Tommy Tuberville who are happy to promote white nationalism for a couple of days until they get called out enough to back off.
Well, using that accent, when you saw that initial interview with Caitlin Collins, my first reaction was like, she should have done a far better job. Yet I'll give anybody credit for letting someone hang themselves like that. Just keep talking. But at the same time, At one point, he said, listen, I've spent more time around minorities than anybody up here on Capitol Hill. And I was like, it was just my mind had exploded at that point. I was like, what about the people who, by the way, don't love being called minorities anymore, that are people of color that are on the Hill? Do you think they might have spent more time, even much less everybody but you, the football coach? What were your thoughts on that interview and how it went and the aftermath?
Well, I'd be curious to hear from some of his former players. What was he like to play for? I mean, I'm usually pretty critical of CNN, as you might have noticed. And, the Caitlin Collins town hall with Trump was just a low point for journalism.
Yeah.
But in this instance, I felt like I was watching somebody interview a tree stump, and they kept saying over and over again, "You're a tree stump." And the tree stump kept saying, "No, I'm an automobile." And at some point, I just really started feeling sorry for her, because here's the thing. When you're talking to a racist dumb shit, you're never going to get a smart answer. You're never going to ask a question that's so smart that suddenly something clicks in their head and they decide to stop being a racist dumb shit. It's just kind of who they are.
But I feel like our responsibility, certainly I feel this way now. I've interviewed just about every single expert who's written a book about white Christian nationalism, fascism, the history of authoritarianism. Like, I've talked to all these people who are on the show. I feel like I have a really good understanding of the terminology and the danger of the ideology in the movement. I thought Chuck Schumer did a damn good job listing off all on the Senate floor yesterday, all of the different white supremacist massacres that have occurred in this country over the past few years, from Charleston to Buffalo, to El Paso, I think he mentioned, but there's so many more, to the synagogue in Pittsburgh. And we know the danger of it. And yet I feel like CNN and others don't really have a good handle on explaining just how dangerous this ideology movement is, especially the question being within the military.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's a matter of being out of touch. This idea of political violence is treated as a hypothetical or, a possibility, when the reality is it's happening right now all over the country. It's, I keep coming back to, it was 2.5 years ago that scum attacked and overtook the United States Capitol. And for the first time in our nation's history, the Confederate flag was waved inside the Capitol. Man, that didn't happen during the Civil War. So no, to me, I think there's safety for reporters to keep talking about it as some sort of abstraction, right? Because if you start admitting that there are real, violent, deadly ramifications for the rhetoric they're hearing and repeating every day, then you're really going to have to deal with some big cans of worms.
Going back to, well said, the Earth 1, Earth 2 thing. I've been covering politics long enough, around the same amount in different ways than you have, though. But we've seen a lot in terms of, certainly during the Obama administration, the investigations that Republicans launched into Hillary Clinton, who was Secretary of State, the Attorney General, and others, that went nowhere during the Obama administration when Republicans had the chairmanship, the majorities in the House and the Oversight Committee and other committees. They investigated all these things and nothing ever came out. There was never any kind of real evidence, especially on something like Benghazi. Hillary Clinton sat there for 11 hours and they didn't lay a glove on her because they didn't really have a thing. They were making something up. Fast and Furious, the IRS. We're seeing that again. And this week was probably the craziest one ever because James Comer, the Oversight Committee chairman, had said a couple weeks ago that the witness they have that can connect the Bidens to corruption with China has gone missing. Nobody's heard from him. This is the week that we found out that he's on the lam because the Department of Justice has indicted this man for some crazy crimes, foreign actor working with Iran and China against the U.S., this dual citizen. And James Comer and Republicans, they're not giving up on this guy. And I wanted to you've been writing about this and thinking about this. What about this in terms of the field of investigations that they launched and how this blew up in their face this week in such an unprecedented way?
I mean, it seems like a pretty big damn scandal, right? The chairman of the House Oversight Committee has been relying on the testimony of an alleged Chinese spy to smear the president of the United States and his only surviving son. And this is treated as completely normal. There's nothing normal about any of this. Now, I really thought this was the week where it's almost a gut check moment for the Beltway media, right? It's like, how much of this innuendo are we going to get, are we going to print? Are we going to repeat without any skepticism? And I wonder if maybe they're so invested in building that relationship with those Republicans that they're willing to downplay something this shocking to keep that relationship going.
Any examples of what you're talking about in terms of the way it's covered?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, Comer has time and time again said he doesn't have any evidence for the charges he's made. But every time he drops a new letter to Chris Wray, or every time he comes up with a new accusation on Fox News, you get the Politico headline. He gets the Politico headline he wants, or he gets the CNN headline he wants. At what point do they stop and say, hey, man, do you have anything other than just, accusations? Because I promise you, if the shoe was on the other foot, they'd be demanding to see the proof first.
I feel like they have, even on Fox News with him, though. Even like somebody at Fox News, like, wait, I forget who it was. It might have been even Maria Bartiromo. She's like, you don't even know where this guy is? You lost him? Like, I feel like they have asked him I don't know if they've asked him, the right way, or if they've covered it the right way, or if they've given it any dignity. And that's what I'm saying. There's this long list of terribly uncredible accusations against Democrats in power, presidents and the attorney general. I mean, they're trying to impeach just about every cabinet secretary. And I feel like, I don't know how best to cover it. It's just it constantly surprises me that they launch these efforts and get mud on their face and then they just do it again. I guess it works.
I mean, that's it. It's the Groundhog Day nature of it all. And I think that's what's so damn frustrating is, personally, when I was a working reporter, if somebody kept lying to me, I eventually stopped quoting them because I felt like I was lying to my readers. If somebody has just, the concept of credibility, right, is once it's gone, it's gone. But if you keep giving the same liars the benefit of the doubt over and over again, then, we might as well just do away with the concept.
I really wish credibility was the currency that mattered most in politics and media and life.
Or shame.
Yeah, or shame. Well, the best thing or worst thing to criticize many in the Beltway media for over the last 2 weeks, and maybe it's representative of a lot of things, and I'm sure you're locked and loaded on this, is the horrible scandal over the cocaine, the baggie of cocaine. The president of the United States was asked about that when he was walking to his helicopter. He was asked about that when he was sitting down with the NATO Secretary General. That's the question that they asked him. Everybody knows what this scenario was. Somebody had cocaine, brought it in the White House, probably happens every day for the last 17 years or longer, and they empty their pockets and put cocaine, or less likely, but still more possible, someone put that cocaine there to make, to connect like the whole Hunter Biden and to do everything that Trump is connecting Hunter and President Biden with that cocaine. Like, I doubt that's what happened. I'm sure it's kind of an innocent mistake. Somebody left their keys somewhere. Nonetheless, reporters are doggedly trying to get to the bottom of that cocaine.
Yeah, big shock that Washington reporters are enamored by the idea of cocaine. I'll pretend like I didn't have any experience with that when I was there, too. To me, the most interesting thing about the cocaine story is Donald Trump put Barack Obama's address on Truth Social, and then a crazy man with guns went to the Obama's neighborhood. Oh, wait, it's not as exciting as cocaine, right? So we didn't hear about that nonstop. President Biden didn't get asked about that when he was having a very important bilateral meeting. And look, I get it. I was a Washington reporter for a long time. I know the sensational stuff leads, but give me a damn break. I mean, first of all, are we seriously still treating the Secret Service like good, honest sources on this stuff? Because I don't trust them. I haven't for a while. I don't know why these people do. I don't know, man. I get it. It's like catnip to them, and they just can't resist.
Is it true? There's a story about you that you used to save your seat in the White House briefing room with a baggie of cocaine. Is that right, Sam?
I love the idea that I would have let a baggie of cocaine get out of my sight for 1 second.
Yeah, that's clearly I've never done cocaine with that joke.
I tell you, I never did bring anything like that in the White House, but I do remember the Fox News booth had almost a full bar in it. And, before I quit drinking, I'd go in there and have an eye opener at, 8 a.m. And so, yeah, I think some of these people ought to get off their very, very high horses.
I didn't know you were a quitter. Tell us something personal about yourself. Why'd you go and do that?
Yeah, man, I quit drinking, gosh, almost 14 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, I went pretty hard. I chased Hunter Thompson's legacy to the White House and then to rehab. But no, it's been one of the nicest things I've ever done for myself.
Did you go to rehab and come out sober and stay sober?
Yeah, I mean, I smoke pot, so I'm what they call California sober. But no, I had a relapse with cocaine about 2 years later that lasted about 6 months. And yeah, since then been soberish.
Oh, wow. What's the secret? Is there any practice for you? Did you do meetings or anything like that?
I did for a while, and I kind of reached the point where that was the only time I was thinking about drinking.
Interesting.
For me, don't get me wrong. The weed is definitely a cheat that helps. But no, for the most part, I just kind of hit that point, I think, where a lot of alcoholics do, where all you could see is the pain that comes after. And so the good time it starts with.
By the way, I know so many people that are sober but smoke weed, and including my brother. And I think that needs to be reexamined and talked about, because I don't think you should really. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah. I don't know. I struggle with it. I've talked to addiction experts that feel good and bad about it.
Yeah.
For me, I was doing great, completely sober, but I was really bored, and I was worried that boredom was going to send me back to the bars. And I just went back to my old high school pothead ways. Well,
you're talking to a fellow traveler, and I feel like a lot of times it's performance enhancing for me. So, I mean, not like while I'm on mic or performing, but like it helps me focus, certainly when I'm doing a lot of other things. And I don't know, I haven't seen the detriments. As long as my VO2 max stays at the high level it's at, Sam, as long as I can continue in this temple of a body at this level, I'm not seeing
it. You and me both, brother. I'm learning to surf this summer, and I'm learning just exactly how out of shape I am. And that may be the first thing to go.
Now's the time. Let me ask you one or two more quick about the news. I appreciate you sharing that, though, with me. Yeah. I always love to get to know people and whatever they're dealing with. I think it's really important and certainly helpful when you talk about it, obviously. So what about the former president, human bag of tar, and his legal issues that we're seeing unfold day by day by day? Where do you think this ends up, and what are you paying most attention to, if anything?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm a very petty, vengeful man, and I am never going to stop being angry about January 6th. That's the indictment I want to see.
Got it.
That's the accountability I want to see. Yeah. I want to see Georgia. I want to see the classified docs. Yeah. I want to see E. Jean Carroll get everything that's coming to her, every last damn penny. But man, for me, it's the January 6th one. That's what I want. Now, will his voters give a shit? Probably not, but they haven't for a long time. And that's not the metric I use to decide whether something's right or wrong. And so, yeah, that's the one I'm waiting for.
Yeah, I like that. Me too. Especially getting to know like some of those police officers, Capitol police officers like Harry Dunn, and following them on social media, then seeing they never let you forget. And I appreciate that that's something that you think about it that way too. I certainly do. What about the campaign? I mean, like say anything you want about, Joe Biden running again, and every day it seems like we're on this. It's not like it was when Trump was president. It's not like that at all, because it's a different kind of fear, but you're always worried about the old guy. You're like, geez, I hope today's not the day that he misspeaks so badly it really damages him that much more, or falls, or anything like that. He is, old, and it makes me worried all the time about him, the way I would be about anybody that I care about who's that age, but certainly the president. I think about that. Tell me I shouldn't. Tell me I can replace that worry with something else.
Man, I think worrying is just kind of part of the territory these days. Once we've seen what we went through with the Trump years, I think we're going to worry no matter what. If you want to worry less, I would say look at the unemployment rate and look at what inflation's doing. If you want to worry less, I don't know, look at the polling between Trump and Biden. President Biden, look, I will be the first to point out there are several things about the guy I have problems with. But man, you'd be hard pressed to say there's been a better president in my lifetime. I mean, look at this economy. We went through a once in a century pandemic and recovered like it was nothing. And you look at, other countries that are developed like we are, we're head and shoulders above all of them. So yeah, look, I get it. It bothers me too. I go to the Comedy Store pretty regularly, and that's a pretty common joke is about Joe Biden's age. And And I'm a big believer that, you know, those kind of pop culture things, it really does seep into the national consciousness. And so, look, I think we're going to be running against that fear for the next year and a half. But we've got some pretty good numbers and some pretty good stories to tell to go with it.
Well, all the late night shows are on strike, so they're not even able to make those jokes and have them be heard. So as long as it stays in the clubs.
I tell you, I'm really hoping these writers take the studio execs for everything they can.
Yeah, say you covered that on and I haven't really talked about that. I work it last week tonight, so I'm missing that paycheck every 2 weeks. It sucks to be without it. I'm directly affected by it, and obviously I know a lot of writers, and you live out there in Southern California. You know, the latest is about the actors union, and they're in a real standoff against the producers. And I forget how you phrase it in the newsletter, but it was perfect. So your thoughts on the studio executives and what they're doing?
Well, I mean, I'm sure you've seen this latest quote from an anonymous studio executive who says, you know, the plan now is to keep pushing it to the point where the writers start losing their houses and apartments. And it's,
I didn't see that. I did not see that.
Sick, degenerate, heartless scum thinks that way. But, you know, the joke you keep seeing over and over again is, you know, writers know how to be poor. They know how to be broke. And if you think you can outlast them by betting on that strategy, you're probably going to lose.
That's a great point. All right, one more. I didn't ask you about, specifically I talked about Biden and his age, but what about, who do you think, today everybody's talking about, the last few days everybody's talking about Glenn Youngkin, and DeSantis has failed so badly. So maybe shit on DeSantis and tell me if you think, tell me what, shit on DeSantis, tell me what you think about Chris Christie's role right now, and tell me if you think that, and this is true, in history, there's someone who is not out there and hasn't, run. Everybody's talking about Glenn Youngkin today. Apparently the headlines today, Rupert Murdoch really wants Glenn Youngkin to run. I'm like, why did I read that sentence? But your thoughts?
You talking about the moderate Glenn Youngkin we heard so much about?
So moderate. Yeah, he wears a sweater vest or a fleece vest. He's so moderate. Yeah, he's an extremist, and he caters to Christian white nationalists. That's my thought. Quick.
Yeah, well, just the other day we found out they removed a bunch of LGBT youth resources from state websites. How many gay kids do they want to kill themselves? How many would make him a moderate? Look, DeSantis, I continue to be mystified by how we ever got here. Who looked at this guy and thought, you know what, that guy's got presidential material written all over him?
I think because I'll answer that. I think because he's tried very much to be a carbon copy of Donald Trump, and people had to maybe hedge on whether or not that kind of cruelty would be effective for someone other than Donald Trump. And I think the truth is, no, you got to be a special kind of person to be that kind of an asshole and somehow win people over. And certainly he's won a lot of people over, but not in the way that Donald Trump certainly has. And not even in Florida, apparently.
No, I think that's the thing. There's the first primary, which is the Republican donor and press primary, where, sort of the smoke-filled back room people kind of kick the tires and decide if this person can run or not. I think it's very instructive that the second DeSantis got out of that weird first primary and started being around normal human beings, they didn't want anything to do with him. The red wave people got another one wrong.
They certainly did, and they continue to. We'll see what happens next. And one of the best ways to know what's happening is to read your daily newsletter, which is by far my favorite, now with a weekly podcast, which is upsetting me because it's so good, and you shouldn't be that good. And that's the best kind of compliment I think I can give. It
means a lot to me.
Yes, you're welcome. Sam, thanks so much for joining me. It's always great to catch up. I hope everybody subscribes and to the newsletter if they haven't already. And we'll talk soon, pal.
Pete, this was a blast. Thanks so much for always being so supportive, and thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Always, pal.
Well, there you go. Sam Youngman. Go follow him on all of the social media. You can find those links in today's show notes. And, of course, go subscribe to Today's Big Stuff. Get it in your box. It's free. You can pay for it if you want, like everything else. Adam Parkhomenko and Sam Youngman put that together every day. They're brilliant, they're funny, and they're plugged in. I think you'll love it if you like this show. So there you go. I hope you like it. That's today's episode of Can You Talk Real Quick? They're not here every day, but I try to get a few on a week. Thanks for your support. Can't do it without you. Please go review the podcast on Spotify, Apple, iTunes. And if you haven't signed up for a paid subscription, please do that now to patreon.com/Pete Dominic.
Stand up. I think you're driving wheels, man. right on ignoring us if it keeps in sight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You gotta stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You gotta stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. So get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. And even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. This is the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up. We got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up. You got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up and show obedience to the voice inside. And listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up.